But some of those signs can be, one is you're starting to see that those meetings are accumulating. You're
Mm.
having, and I'm a big believer on this meeting could have been an email.
Yes. Good check. Yeah.
This meeting could have been an email. And if a lot of times is you're not doing that, you just feel like you have to do you have
Hmm.
to always be reiterating the information and you have to be always doing that. That's when you feel like, okay, is there a space that I can bring someone else and do that?
Hmm.
The other part is investor expectations, where a lot of the companies, whether they have VCs or so on, they have a board member and they start somewhat moving away from the target of,
Hmm.
growing the business, sales, and so on into operations, just
Hmm.
having day-to-day things that could have been automated or could have been improved on or could be managed. Lack of boundaries as well.
Hmm.
Being an entrepreneur, you do acknowledge that
Yes.
life and work do mix very much. It's like
Hmm.
a lot more versus like an employee. As an entrepreneur, as an owner, they mix a lot. But when it comes to that point where you can't separate the mix anymore
Yeah.
and your life has been taken over completely with that, that's when we start to ask this. And then lastly is the constant problem solving. If you always feel that you're always having to be just problem solving someone else's
Hmm.
problem or something to go
Hmm.
through, and that's where, like, there's also like physical symptoms that people go through. You start seeing the stress on their face, the weight gain, all those things that just,
Yeah.
again, I'm no doctor, but you can see that there are things that people just look tired.
All right, here we are today with Ibrahim Dabash, who joining us from BDC. So I'm really, as always, I'm really excited to talk to leaders and learn from their experience and their expertise on what it really takes to perform sustainably these days and I like to think about it from individual and organizational success. So welcome to the podcast. I started saying podcast. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you guys today as well.
Awesome. So I really want to start. I like to dive right in. And I know that you've made an interesting career move where you've stepped back from management into a more of an individual contributor role. While still, I know you're working with many different organizations strategically. But let me just start by asking you what drove that decision for you? And has it taught you anything about leadership from this different angle, an atypical kind of career step?
Absolutely. I mean, I always say it's funny because when I first kind of some of the roles I started early in my career were accidentally management roles where I feel like I just got thrown into it. Younger years was like, okay, now we've got those teams, you've got those folks,
Mhm.
and you've got to kind of focus on it. And if one thing leaders know is that it is not an easy skill to learn, and it is something that takes a while. And that's when I realized that being thrown into it right away did give me the aspect of a manager and so on, but I did
Mhm.
not also get the aspect of the individual contributor, did not get that part, did not work on it. But then I
Mhm.
also end up switching industries, moving into from real estate into banking. And
Mhm.
when you switch into that, it made more sense to actually take it back, work on that part, start from there, and learn into what does it take to be an effective individual contributor. That way, down the line, if they choose back into management, how can I be available support for those individuals? How can I be there, understand the challenges they go through, and versus where I always say, like, the first manager role, I've had like 20 people or so. And being a type A personality, you learn a
Mhm.
lot when not everyone has a type A personality and not everyone is willing to exert the same things. And
Mhm.
that's part of the nature and that's part of the work environment that you have to understand.
Okay, that's a very thoughtful path. Thank you for sharing that. And you're right. Usually accidental management is more typical of what happens. I like that. So, pick. I would love to pick a little bit on the fact that you said it's not an easy skill to learn. So, in some of these discussions and some of the research that we become really aware of, it's actually like some of the skills of leadership are actually quite consistent even across industries and functions because it's really about really kind of connecting goals, team goals to organizational goals, individual goals, and then leading, with alignment, et cetera. There's a lot of really alignment on what leadership is. But I totally agree with you. It's also not an easy skill to learn. Why do you think, what are some of the big challenges this day and age on developing leadership skills?
First, to start, like, why is it easy? I think
Hmm.
it's the fact is that you're dealing with multiple peoples with their own lives. And now in the
Mm,
world we live in, remote work, their backgrounds, their times of work. You have
yeah,
people who have kids, people who have don't have kids, people who are busy with things. There are personal instances and personal struggles that people have to go through. And as a manager, it is impossible sometimes to know everything that's going on
sure,
with your
yeah.
workers and your team's personal
Mhm.
lives. But no one is ever able to 100% separate their personal and their work lives.
No.
And when you do take that step back and you look at it, you're like, okay, what is really going in your personal life and how is that impacting your work? Back in the day was
Mhm.
that always the push for separate it, otherwise you're in trouble. Separate it or you're
Right,
not a high performer. You're
right.
not becoming the person who you want to be. But I believe that we've moved a long way from that
Mhm.
into realizing we're moving into a direction of work and life integration. Yes, there's
Yeah.
a work-life balance, and yes, but there's a causation and a flow of paths that go between your work and your personal life.
Yes.
If your personal life is feeling good, you're gonna work very good in life. And same as well, if your work is feeling great, your personal life
Yes.
goes well. And it works hand in hand. And as a manager, as a leader in general, it doesn't matter whether it's like a one person, a team person, or it doesn't matter how big your team is. You always have to be able to connect with them on a personal level to actually understand their struggles, their journeys, and where they are and where they want to get. 'Cause
Mhm.
people work for people because they want to be for them, not because they just want to be working all the time.
That is I love that point, and I love that that came up so fast. Of course, I this is a huge opinion I share with completely agree with you, and I love that you're bringing it up so boldly right in the front. Do you see this as a theme with organizations and in the industry that you're working with to boldly say it's all about work-life integration? You can't really have, true success at work without having, taking care of the other aspects of life as well.
Absolutely. I think most organizations right now have come to that realization, have come
Mm,
to realization is that you can't just separate it anymore. That's why
yes.
you see now mental health wellnesses are coming up. People are coming up talking about it.
Yes.
Manager are not just willing, to check in if you go into your organization. It's not like, hey, what is your goals? Most of them is like, hey, how are you feeling? What are you going through? And
Yes.
I see it in a lot of organizations I've been through and when I've worked with outside or companies I've supported, they all talk about this. How
Mhm.
is this the new normal now?
Mm.
We've talked about like COVID and everything. We're like the new
Yeah.
normal. This is the new normal, is that
Yes.
you do
Okay.
care about people's mental health, their well-being, and what's going on in their personal lives that they could show up as 100% in their workday as well.
Yeah, I mean, makes a ton of sense to me because not only is it common sense and, human first, but the data shows, right? That's what it takes actually for performance to really happen. When I worked deeply with a psychologist on some of these aspects, and she highlighted how really the opposite that when we are splitting ourselves, pretending work, self, myself, there's so much overhead that's introduced in that split that is just so weight and the way the world is today is just not conducive to actual performance and result delivery. So that really kind of resonated with me, and I love that you're talking about that.
Appreciate it. No, yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
on.
no, perfect. I want to ask you a little bit about so you're obviously in your role, you're working within a large organization, Canada-wide, obviously BDC, but you are working with many dynamic startups and scale-ups in the prairies, right? So what kind of so that's a different size, obviously size and different growth challenges. What are some of the patterns you're seeing in terms of leadership challenges as your client organizations are growing?
Absolutely. I think the big lesson that people do learn is
Mhm.
that it takes a different manager to lead $100,000 business, $1 million business, $5 million business, and $10 million business, and go on. And you
Mhm.
could just, and it takes a special kind of courage and a special kind of vulnerability to say, my skill set was meant for the beginning. I
Right.
don't have what it takes for the future. And there are usually two ways that managers do, or like founders or CEOs do choose to take.
Mm.
First option is realizing that, yes, I am missing that skill, but as any skills, most skills can be lost, can be
Mhm.
taught, and can be learned. So taking the right step by having the people around you who can teach you those skills or who can implement you. So we do this a lot where we do have something called a growth driver program in
Mm.
BDC, where we support leaders to really become better and really expand into the role as CEOs and founders, so on. The other part is as when you get way, way bigger is Is it time to bring now someone who is
Mhm.
more operationally and management adept?
Mhm.
Because you see, as someone especially works in tech and innovation, I see phenomenal tech founders who have absolute gems for brains, who are able to create wonderful products, services, things that the world needs. But they can sometimes struggle with the people aspect of things, or
Mhm.
struggle sometimes with bringing the sales or bringing the push, the HR. And I've seen some phenomenal leaders who are able to bring other people to support them, and it only takes them further on in that ladder.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So are you doing a lot of do you find that, like, you're, helping, companies raise their awareness about where they are, where they're going, what it really helps what it really needs to kind of get to that next level?
Absolutely. I think that's part of our role.
Yeah.
Part of our role is that we do work as advice providers,
Mhm.
where most people, and I think with the world right now is most information is freely available out there,
Yes.
but it takes some time to find it and so on.
Yes.
And same for us, see a lot of things in the market. We deal with big companies, small companies, service
Mhm.
providers.
Right.
It's almost you create your own bank of knowledge of
Yes.
things that have been done or things that can be done in the future. And when you're able to reiterate this to people at no cost, and usually you're like, hey, this is what I've seen. This is
Yeah.
what I've been through. This is, and as well, when people do, I get to talk about my own mess ups in the past.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and I talk about this, people do appreciate that because in a lot of
Of
ways
course.
brings
Mhm.
in that. So I do always try to spend the time to provide advice, spend the time to bring on some new ways of thinking about things.
Mhm.
And if there are any resources or things I know, whether it's inside BDC or outside BDC, I do try to bring it into their own hands to work with that.
Yeah. I imagine that's really great value that the founders and the leadership teams see with your partnerships. Are you able to share any kind of early warning signs or any warning signs that you're looking for to help fast growing companies realize that they are heading into, be it either burnout or overwork, or in, needing to go into a different gear with their skills and capabilities like you mentioned.
There are a number of ones that are a bit more common between things. You can start seeing it as, especially when you come into the startup life, there's always the grind. You're always trying to mash different things. You're meeting a million different things. You're trying to meet with people, reach out there.
Mhm.
But some of those signs can be, one is you're starting to see that those meetings are accumulating. You're
Mm.
having, and I'm a big believer on this meeting could have been an email.
Yes, good check. Yeah.
This meeting could have been an email. And if a lot of times is you're not doing that, you just feel like you have to do you have
Mhm.
to always be reiterating the information and you have to be always doing that. That's when you feel like, okay, is there a space that I can bring someone else and do that?
Mhm.
The other part is investor expectations, where a lot of the companies, whether they have VCs or so on, they have a board member and they start somewhat moving away from the target of
Mhm.
growing the business, sales, and so on into operations, just
Mm.
having day-to-day things that could have been automated or could have been improved on or could be managed. Lack of boundaries as well.
Mhm.
Being an entrepreneur, you do acknowledge that
Yes.
life and work do mix very much. It's like
Mhm.
a lot more versus like an employee. As an entrepreneur, as an owner, they mix a lot. But when it comes to that point where you can't separate the mix anymore
Yeah.
and your life has been taken over completely with that, that's when we start to ask this. And then lastly is the constant problem solving. If you always feel that you're always having to be just problem solving someone else's
Mm.
problem or something to go
Mhm.
through, and that's where there's also like physical symptoms that people go through. You start seeing the stress on their face, the weight gain, all those things that just,
Yeah.
again, I'm no doctor, but you can see that there are things that people just look tired and look at. When was the last time you had a rest day?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because it's in those it can be very tricky that seeing what's that healthy growth stress, because and versus when it becomes an unsustainable burnout pattern. It can be very tricky. And I'm really interested about this. I myself have gone through the kind of the realization of where your grit, your greatest, asset can turn into a liability without a healthy switchover. So
Yeah.
I'm so interested now in discovering these conversations, at how people can look at that individual level, but also what the symptoms are at the organizational level, because that can also start to add up, obviously, with lots of people looking at it differently. So that's a really nice practical list that you just shared.
Agreed. Agreed on
Yes.
that part.
Awesome. So, I mean, I have a financial consultant from BDC here, so I have to ask you some data-driven questions and take this opportunity because, like you shared, there's some trends where we're moving from kind of like looking work-life integration, recognizing some of these burnout patterns, but also what I would add is that there is a real movement from moving away from training being measured in, participant satisfaction to really what's it doing for my business, why we're investing in the first place in leadership development, and how do I see this reflected on the bottom line. So I would just love to pick your brain a little bit about what have you seen, and maybe start like by maybe starting even how to help people see that data can help them move beyond gut-based decision making to more systemized and ROI driven investment in this space.
There are a number of ways that you can think about it.
Hmm.
A, of course, you can always get someone who's, an expert in this who can
Yes, of course. Yes.
bring that, who can start doing those big numbers for you, crunch it, and charge a big amount of money or a small amount, depends on who you find.
Hmm.
That's one of the options. And there's numbers, data. As someone who both their studies, the undergrad and an MBA, was always in finance, I do
Yeah.
love numbers and I do love the percentages that goes with it. And when you do look at both values that do impact through your journey, you can really start seeing a trends in it. So some of the
Mm.
things that we people really can adjust into it, as most banks or most companies always do satisfaction for outside clients and so on.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people as well do it internally, and we've realized there's a move in the employee feedback. I was reading recently this study by Ipsos actually, and Ipsos was talking about this: is how employers are now reaching out to them and asking for a bit more integrated questions towards someone's day-to-day life.
Mm.
A lot of different past surveys in the past that used to come to employees were like, how do you feel in general about your job? Does this feel stressful?
Mhm.
But now they're addressing, hey, what part in this that makes you stressed?
Mm.
Because that way, when you are able to take a step back and review job description, workloads, ability to train,
Mhm.
and onboarding is one of those things that people struggle with a lot. Is,
Mhm.
you've got employees in different functions, different thoughts, different locations. Once again,
Mhm.
we even though most companies are coming back into work from office, there's still a big aspect for hybrid options. There's a big aspect for multiple locations. So
Mhm.
that training is no longer you just knock on the door, ask your manager, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Let's do that." You can reach out to them on Teams, Zoom, and everything, but you have to realize is that the onus works on a capacity for you to work on your problem solving a bit earlier.
Mhm.
That way, you can tackle those problems on your own and escalate further once you met. This works in both capacities. In A, it frees up managers' time for some of those times that actually needs to be resolved,
Mhm.
attention to time. The
Mhm.
other part, it allows employees to harden a bit more of problem solving. Where can you find details and so on? It is a lot easier right now with it when, of course, like when you can find
Of course.
details and you can find
Mhm.
information. But there's still not every directory or not everything that the business does is now has been automated or has been listed online.
No.
Or if you go a startup, they haven't done manuals for everything. A lot of things are still been done that.
No.
So how
Yeah.
do you resolve it right away your own?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something, when you're helping, organizations put them on the right path for performance and growth, is there some key metrics that you just wish, the leaders were tracking just to help themselves and, the ecosystem see how they're going forward?
Metrics per se, I want to be able to tell specific ones that I would have right on top of my mind, but there are ones that would correlate to things. So a proactivity,
Mhm.
we are still in a productivity crisis in North
Yes.
America in general due to how work gets done. But in a way is how do you get work done in the right way? The reason why there are countries out there that are moving to the 4 day work weeks, because yes, you're able to do the same amount of work in 4 days, but how do you maximize those hours per work?
Yeah.
How do you ensure that all those things? Is it less like now is 32 and a half versus 40 hours of work week? But how are you actually spending those months?
Mm.
Are you spending time on repetitive tasks? And that's where people trying to do it, measure it is ask them, are you just answering emails and so on? Are you doing that? And a skill that I found a lot of people, some struggle with as well, is being able to time block and scheduling properly. Where if
Yeah.
you're always trying to put fires left and right at all the exact times, you're almost running without understanding what are you actually doing.
Yes,
Got to
totally.
be able to block your time and talk to you. What are you doing? Hey, this is time for XYZ. I'm only doing XYZ.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ABC. I'm not doing
Yeah.
2K. I'm doing this task. And once this task finishes, I'll switch to the other one.
Yeah.
And if you focus on that, it allows you to do this in a lot of different ways, in a lot better way.
Yeah. I love it when even in this more advanced, complex age we live in, always kind of comes back, conversation comes back to basics, right? Like, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? Accomplish it, do it one thing at a time, do the next thing. That's actually what would be great for productivity, right? If people
Agreed.
had clarity. Sorry, I always come back, but I'm like, that's definitely, yeah, something I believe in. It comes out of these conversations as well. You didn't talk about a greatest AI tool to help with this. No, that's awesome. So you've seen leadership from multiple angles, right? So as a manager, advisor, individual contributor before and now again, what's the biggest gap that you observe when companies think they're developing leaders versus what actually drives organizational performance?
I think in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
we will always try to do that. And there are ways it has been proven that my theory in a wrong way.
Yeah.
Ability to have emotional intelligence is one
Mm.
of those things that surpasses it. Yes, and I always say there have been managers who have had low IQ and have led businesses into billions and billions, and those are phenomenal people, and will always be there,
Yeah.
and we'll always have so much respect for them. But those are the outliers. Those
Mm.
are the people where you've had people who are motivated by certain growth or so on. But as a typical manager, if you have your
Yeah.
team and so on, you have to understand their intrinsic motivations. You have to understand what
Yes.
takes them. You have to understand, and in a way, you have to become close and respected and a comrade to them in a way.
Hmm.
Where yes, the manager, everything. The theory is separate management from employees. There always be like this space with it. But it's been seen that people who seen their manager as someone they can trust, as someone they can
Yes, absolutely.
even share a laugh with, or even if you
Yeah.
just provide them a small detail about, hey, I remember something personal about you. I
Yeah.
remember something you told me about your kid going through something. You've
Mm.
told me you about your mom, your dad, something that's really
Hmm.
connects to that. People feel have been either even more humanized and allows them to feel motivated to take the extra step, to do work the extra hours, to really show up for that said
Yeah.
manager that has showed them to them that there's a space for them to do what they want. And
Hmm.
that's where like the trend is moving, is really move towards humanization and
Yes.
really move to a bit more into becoming a lot less, a lot more than just a manager, someone that actually people rely on to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that answer. Again, kind of that human to human, still people working together, right? Yeah, and adding that personal touch. Even there, we say, having fun at work. I used to always talk about that, and then people would be like, "What are you talking about? Be having fun?" I was like, "Come on!" So critical.
Absolutely. As this book, I've always like thought about it in like read it years ago when first just started kind of gaining traction was Brene Brown again, once
Yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah,
Interaction years ago, still very relevant and so on.
yeah,
But just dare to lead, having vulnerability in a way. And when you do show people that there's a vulnerable side of you as well, you're not just this
yeah.
hard wall that can, but I think you're actually vulnerable, you're with them as well. It makes a lot more sense for people to actually join with you in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to say that too, which I totally believe in that. Remember vividly moments when we're faced with total uncertainty or something unknown to do. And in my leader role, I would be the first one to say, "Oh my gosh, I've never done anything like this." The coolest thing was like, like I'm like, and the cool things you see the room almost take a breath, like relax, right? You're like, "Oh, she can say that." Okay. And now we're like, now let's figure out. Then, I can also own the fact that I have no idea what to do, how we can actually get on the solution path together. So I love that you're bringing that up as well. I know congratulations, you recently completed your MBA.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did mine, earlier in my career. So I would just love to ask you, just having more experience, obviously, going through such a program. Have you seen, kind of the theoretical perspective versus, reality? Is there any kind of glaring differences that like, that you took away from that experience?
I'll definitely see it. I think MBAs are one of those things that People make
Mhm.
it as their own journey.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. You can take your own journey. You can choose to have purely theoretical classes. You can choose to have less academics.
Mhm.
You make it out what you want.
Yeah.
But from my side, when I took my MBA, I kind of really wanted to improve who I am as a leader and improve also the direction I go. It's the
Mhm.
same direction with the finance again. Shout out almost like to University of Calgary and Haskell, where they've actually done this in a lot of unique and efficient ways. They
Mhm.
provided opportunities. One of them being actually was a whole week of a leadership kind of retreat where you spend the whole week in the mountains and so on. You improve on your leadership, communication, and almost reflect on it in different ways.
Mhm.
There's also opportunities when you can go internationally, where you actually see how do people do things out there.
Mhm.
Where we got to see the CEO of Air Mexico, people who have done phenomenal work, and you get to see the word that does. And then lastly, as well, is learning that you can step out of your comfort zone a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And it's back to your point about humor as well.
Yeah.
Humor is honestly a secret weapon in so many
Yes.
ways. And there's this book, if you're not sure if you ever read it, it's called Humor Seriously.
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that. Awesome.
Humor Seriously is a phenomenal work that
Cool.
actually talks about how humor and people who engage with humor, not of course in a disrespectful or like
Yeah,
in a
of course,
silly
yeah.
way, in
Mhm.
a way that's lighthearted and people who can associate humor can climb up their social ladder and their corporate ladder or even their life ladder so much easier. Because in a way, you just stick to that. People associate you with a happy emotion now. People are like, oh, you know what? This person, I like them. They've,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I do like hanging out with them. I really like to after that. And they like immediately just feel a lot more comfortable. And that was
Yeah.
one of the things I've also realized in my MBA was small humor, small, well-placed humor
Yeah.
can go a
Totally.
long way in any kind of circle.
Yeah. Well, totally. It humanizes things again, right? And it just has us enjoying things all the time. There's totally room and play, like room for that in workplace. I can't agree more. Really, again, it connects to that whole work-life integration piece, right? Like we're friends with our colleagues. We're spending so much time with them any hour of the day sometimes, right? We should be enjoying that one way or another. Yeah. Perfect.
Could agree more.
Thank you so much for sharing, your very thoughtful approach and insights onto this from your such a varied experience. I would love to ask you, and I know you brought up some really great critical success factors already, but if you had a magic wand to share with the companies you're working with to use to help them design, leadership pipeline from the ground up, what would your magic wand be all about?
I'll take it back as ability to measure someone's empathy and
Okay, yeah,
someone's ability to have emotional intelligence. Empathy is one of those things that it's so hard to measure because
yeah,
right now you can do a million different personality tests,
yeah,
but true empathy that where someone is, when push comes to shove, are you able to relate to people? Are you able to connect with us? Are you able to sympathize with them, empathize at what they're going through? If you can see those ones and you can work on it and empathy and your soft skills from there, you can measure it. That will be able to phenomenal because you can create
measure them.
inherently great leaders. Because we could all talk about it and everyone
Hmm.
knows this. Companies in a lot of ways hire for personality in a lot of ways.
Yeah, right,
Uh,
right.
you can always say that soft skills in terms of your personality, how you hold yourself, how you can engage with people. These are the things that actually get you the job. Unless if, of course, like a technical job, 100%, then
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
that's. And the day and world that we are in business world, your ability to have those skills are the ones that will shoot you further. So if companies have a magic wand that allows them to see those skills and really go beyond the simple personality test, they can have a strong funnel of leaders who are able to make an impact and a strong funnel of leaders who are willing to go above and beyond their small part tasks to actually create a bigger circle.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you seen any tools that actually build EQ? Like, or, or is it, yeah, pause. Let's there. Let me ask you.
Build EQ, I think EQ is each person has requires to work their own, but I
Yes.
found there's this one app and I've loved using it for a while. It was called Dimensional.
Hmm.
Dimensional, have you ever tried it
No,
before?
I have not. No.
Basically every single personality test that you can think of all combined into one platform.
Oh, cool.
All of them. And then you can start comparing it in a way, but it truly is. Because as you repetitively answer certain questions, you almost start reflecting on it.
Yeah.
You start reflecting on those ones. Hey, what am I actually answering here? What am I actually addressing here? And when you looked at it, you start having the tools into reading, getting this comfortable, being comfortable with having uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I always say I was not a great person with emotional intelligence growing up. Struggled with it a lot of ways. I struggled with connecting with people. I
Hmm.
grew up with a massive stutter. I grew up with a way where I could not even talk in a normal way.
Oh,
I would
wow.
always just stop my phrases. I'd always struggle. If I walk into a room, my face would turn red. I would sweat
Mm.
everywhere, hands sweaty, our hands shaky, and everything. But then I realized one day is that I can connect to people in a lot of different ways because of this.
Mm.
So my
Yeah.
onus was on me was to actually work on connecting with people,
Yeah.
work on finding those common grounds, work on being able to communicate properly. And even your tone, the way you pause, the way you do things, all these things are almost simple weapons and simple things that you can use to connect with people. If people
Okay.
understand what you're talking about easier and you give them the platform to understand you easier,
Hmm.
deep down, they just don't know why, but they want to like you. Deep down, they just want to be trustful of you, and they want to be actually
Yeah.
willing to take a gamble on you as a person.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I love that story. That's a great way to kind of wrap up today. Success story on building EQ, which sometimes I know data kind of questions whether it's possible or not, or you're just born with it or not, which always I find the most scary limiting things. But you've just shown no. And also, I just love, if I might say, using one of your own personal challenge actually as a key to your success today, to turn that into your secret weapon. I think that's such a positive, yeah, nice, positive note to share. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much for your great insights. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, Abraham, today.
Same for you. Thank you for having me today, and appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely.